Welcome back, folks. So after a long wait, we finally have a new look at Gothic 1 Remake, upcoming game from Alkimia Interactive, a studio formed specifically to make this, which consists of old Gothic fans, including some people which were involved in the old games like the composer Kai Rosenkrantz. And this arrives shortly after we learn the sad news that Embracer Group closed down Piranha Bytes, the original studio that made the game. Of course, Piranha Bytes studio situation is a lot more complex and deep for this video, so that's why I have another Piranha Bytes specific video coming later, but it's important to know that Alkimia wasn't shut down and they are working on this remake, not Piranha Bytes. To go back to the trailer itself, this one showed a lot more of the world, which includes all three camps and areas around it. We also get to see how Nameless Hero will look like in this game properly now. Trailer also starts with the intro lines we remember from the original, but the voice actor is obviously different, and I don't know if this person is going to be narrating the actual intro to Gothic game, or maybe this is, something just for the trailer itself. But of course, do not expect a lot of the OG voice actors because some of them have sadly passed away. Now, being that this is created in Unreal Engine 5, we can expect a much bigger graphical fidelity in terms of foliage and weather changes, and we get to see how the colony looks with it, especially with details on the ground like these rocks, and I'm glad that nights will be actually dark. During this moment when lightning strikes, it gives a nice contrast to the scene, making it more atmospheric, which is what the OG fans actually want. Atmosphere and immersion was one of the strongest suits of the main game. First off, I will start with graphics and overall color palette. This version of the game is a lot more closer to the original, giving you toned down colors and grittiness, which, give the original its charm. Of course, it can never be one-to-one because in these cases, but comparing it to the old playable teaser, which was, a lot more colorful and vibrant, it's definitely not going in that direction, which is nice. That's why I'm actually glad that the demo was released, since it gathered a lot of feedback from the community, which they obviously translated into development of this one. One of the comments was also about the sky being too blue during some moments, which I'm not worried too much about due to having, different weather conditions, and even in this shot, even though it's clearly sunny, color palette still retains its greenish, brownish tones. This will work good with better shading and shadow systems from Unreal Engine 5, because we see how light will go through the leaves, through the trees, making forests more menacing, as well as providing a more diverse atmosphere depending on the time of the day as well. In this scene, we can see the forests themselves will also be bigger in size, providing much smaller visibility to what is in front of you, which is nice considering original game as well had that feeling with how they designed the level, accompanied by its classical soundtrack. Another scene that really caught my eye was in the swamp camp, or the sect camp, however you want to call it. The density of the camp integrated into the swamp itself is done really well. It's packed with a lot more detail, but still I think retaining the original layout of the camp itself. In the beginning, we also get a look at the old camp and area around it. It seems, most of it will be, again, as I said, the same layout as before, at least when it comes to pathing, and we also get to see some snowy areas in the valley, which will be nice to visit, see how it looks up close. In this scene, for example, in the old camp, I do like some details like muddy tracks and little ponds, which make the area stand out even more and just bring out that grittiness and just the reality of the situation people in the colony are living in. Or hey, even the bridge going out of the old camp, which is much more lush design-wise. Of course, there is some expansion in the area compared to the original, that's kinda normal to see here. We also get to see Xardas Tower for a second, or at least I think this is a Xardas' tower, especially because of its design and location. New camp as well retained its original look, but I cannot wait to see how the area in front of the camp where you have rice fields is going to look like, and how new players will react to that one person which stands there, which, it's gonna be interesting. Speaking of the map layout, we also get to see what the start will be, as it was in the original without that added area in the demo, which was, definitely something. We see that because, well, this gate with these two guards is right at the beginning where we are thrown into the colony with Diego meeting us in that spot. We do see some moments which I don't remember were in the original, like for example this wagon, but it's not a surprise being that dev said they will add some more quests and stories while keeping and expanding on the original missions and quests that we already know. The mine itself is also true to the original, but we know that being that we got some footage of it a while back, and we even get to see the scene of us fighting mine crawlers in it, and it retained the same unnerving original feel to it, which is very nice. And I mean, just a small bonus thing, but I'm really glad to see the arena expanded and enhanced, like it will be utilized more than before, besides, the normal quests and missions and basically challenges we had there in the original. Moving on to the world and NPCs design and behavior, we can see they will remain in similar positions like before and engage in their daily life routines, basically making the world feel as it can function without the main character in it. They will be doing similar actions like we remember, it seems, in terms of, commenting about their daily life when we just walk by, as well as probably gathering around the arena, at least in the old camp in the afternoon, or banding together to eat and later on go to sleep in their homes. I mean, that's what made the original, which came out in 2001, so immersive. This goes along with how you complete quests and progress. So as always, we will be able to do quests how we want, having the ability to traverse the world on our own choosing, being that, as before, they place much stronger enemies in areas where you shouldn't be at, and you will have actual NPCs telling you, do not go into this direction if you are not ready, you will kinda die. So this serves as a nice indication of to turn back or where you will be going in general. This also reflects on the other parts of the map, even in those areas you might stumble upon, let's say, a shadow beast, which at the beginning you best avoid since it will destroy you faster than you unsheathing your weapon. This also means that it will keep the reaction you get when you, let's say, unsheath your sword next to someone who doesn't trust you, especially if you are not a part of their camp, and will warn you to put the weapon down before attacking you. Now, of course, we shall see if they keep the same progression as before, where after a certain quest line, you will move into another act or a chapter basically, which in the original resets the monsters on the map, and changes some things, like for example, some of the NPCs which are going to go to a different location, being that they also have a story of their own, they have their own goal that they have to do, so alongside with you, these things are going to happen. People are going to change their locations, they're gonna be progressing in their story and in their life. To move on to the monsters and NPCs designs, I like how they look, going from scavengers to goblins, lizards, mine crawlers and so on. Although scavengers do seem to have a bit more scale on them compared to the original, which had more skin. Basically it was more open in that sense and it looked more like a featherless bird. We even get to see some orcs and whatever is happening with these bushes in the back, but nothing too much right now, but I will, talk more about them as we get probably the gameplay actual on Gamescom. But I do like their updated armor, it feels like orcish armor, and I will see like how different variations of it will be once we get the game. And I do wonder what their moveset in combat will be and how difficult it will be to fight them, being that they're pretty vicious in their attacks. When it comes to camp armors, it will stay as it is in the original with a full set. When we join we get the basic armor, later on we get a better one, we can, well, buy the better one, and then later on we get the armor sets that we know from the main game, so that is going to stay as is. We also get to see Diego properly here. I mean, he retains his complexity, kinda looks similar to the original one with, some changes here and there. I mean, we got to see the whole gang as well, but from the back, and it wasn't like too much. They haven't shown too much of it, obviously. Fun fact though, the original Diego in Gothic 1 is voiced by William Roberts, who voices Vesemir in The Witcher as well. Speaking of combat, this is probably one of my biggest fears, but at least they ditched that, demo For Honor style combat which was present, which definitely wasn't good, so now they're keeping it more akin as it was to the original game. So to explain to new players, in Gothic your character is not really skilled with the weapons at start, so his moveset will be very limited with how you swing because he won't even know how to hold a sword or any weapon properly. As you invest your learning points with trainers, that you get by leveling up into either one-handed, two-handed bows or crossbows, at least in the original, that's when character will get much more complex movesets, being that the animation is going to change and the character is gonna learn how to properly hold a weapon, and you will be able to do more combos and deal more damage overall, so there is progression in that part. And that system will stay here as well, so as we can see that Nameless Hero is sometimes even struggling to swing that around. Now my fear for this combat are two things. First one being that I want to see how these animations will sequence once we try to strike then dodge, then let's say if we are fighting more enemies, how it is going to transfer from one enemy to another. In the original games it was more of a lock-in system where you had, like, for example, ability to attack right, left, or just do a normal frontal, attack with also a block that you can utilize. But again, it was, kind of strategic in its sense, so I'm sure that this combat is also going to be strategic, being that we're going to be fighting maybe lesser packs of enemies, but those enemies are going to be well, stronger, and they're going to pose a much bigger threat, giving you, well, a lot of damage. But I do like how you have blood going onto the ground here, and even when we hit this scavenger we see damage, or at least a wound on them as well. We can see blood on our clothing. I really like that detail, that they're going heavily into that. And the second fear is how that fight will work against NPC AI, or, well, people, in terms of them attacking us. How fast can we recover from an attack? How will blocking work? How counterattacks will work, and so on. But that scene where we hit the scavenger does have a good feedback, giving weight to the attack. I just hope that the weight of the attack, or, well, the animation itself, won't be a problem later on, being that it's either too stiff or something like it. On the range part, I think it's good. I mean, especially because ranged combat in OG games is more it locks onto the enemy and you just kind of fire at it, but you cannot really aim. But in this game, you can properly aim, which is good. Now the magic part is what probably surprised me the most, being that I really like how spells and their effects look like. Throwing fireballs feels good, and I like it even starts burning the monster, showing real damage on it. On top of that, effect which, Wave of Ice does, for example, is fantastic, so I can definitely see myself pushing for a full mage build in my second playthrough, just because I want to see how stronger spells would look like, and especially how we combine them and what other spells they add, into the game. Also, robes look fantastic because the cloth has proper physics now and it moves around, enhancing the atmosphere. But yes, the magic system definitely a huge upgrade, and definitely a big plus for people who want to go into that build, and I will see probably a lot more people going into it. And that's good because all of these things will complement each other pretty well. Like, for example, if you're going for, like, let's say one-handed combat and bows, or maybe you're going for a two-handed combat and crossbows, all of those things will complement themselves. But now, because they added proper animations to it, like, being able to aim and just to have this cool magic around it, will be a huge plus just to experiment more and try out different builds. Now, after all of what I talked about, I again hope that gameplay-wise it retains the feeling of the original, especially when it comes to questing, being that the freedom you had in it was something special and the game didn't guide your hand. You didn't have a pointer, but you had instructions on how to get there, figuring out other stuff yourself. Original also rewards exploration, so I hope they keep that design which Piranha Bytes was kinda always doing in their games. Right now, besides this, it's tough to know how the release will be, but they are on the right path if you ask me. I mean, look, original game will never be replaced, but if they do this one right, we get to play Gothic again and more people find out about the IP and its value it had on the RPG space and industry as a whole. There was even an original sound when the NPC, or, well, you, when you drop to the ground, makes, which, they said is a placeholder, but if you ask me, they should keep it. And having Kai, as a composer means we get that thick soundtrack that we all love. Also, we are getting gameplay on Gamescom this year, which will give us a better look at it, which also means that we get to see how UI will look, being that, well, the original was very minimalistic, as I mentioned before. It doesn't guide your hand. I mean, even, to have a map, you had to go and buy the map to actually see the map. It had to be done by an actual cartographer. It doesn't just come with UI and something that you have at the beginning, so I hope they retain that same style as it was in the original, because, well, you actually had to navigate the map yourself and kinda learn more about it and, well, get familiar with it, which ultimately is going to help you as you progress. Footage we see is also captured in-game, so that's good. They're becoming more open to show, stuff people want to see, because they have been very secretive until now. Also, on the other hand, we don't have the release date yet, but this is coming out for PC, PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X and S. So, probably 2025. We shall see what happens, but for the time being, well, we can just wait for the actual gameplay video. And that's it for today. I will talk more about Gothic because, well, this is my favorite game of all time as we get closer to the release and as we, get more information about it. And also, this channel started with this game almost 12 years ago. So subscribe to stay updated with the latest news and lore, as I said, and join our community on Twitter and Discord. Huge thanks to my current Patreon supporters, and I will see you all soon with a new video. Stay classy and goodbye.